Alrighty guys, last week we talked about three-dimensional shapes and finding volume. Today we're going to talk about compound volume, and I split this into 2 days lessons. So your objective today is that students will be able to analyze shapes and apply formula to find the volume of a composite shape. Now what does that mean? So when you hear compound volume, I want you to think of a couple things. I want you to think of that, okay, I have a composite three-dimensional shape. We need to split it. So I need to figure out what type of shape am I working with and how do I find the volume of each of them. Determine the formula and find the volume. And then once you have them, you add it together. It's kind of like what we did 2 weeks ago with composite area. When we talked about area, we had different shapes, whether it was like a semicircle or a quarter of a circle combined with like a piece of a square or something of that sort. So let's look at two examples, and I want you to copy these in your notebook. So question 1 says, find the volume. Let's round this to the nearest tenth. Now, when you look at this, this is the first thing that should come to mind. What shapes do you see? So if I was to just extend this out, you would see that here I have a rectangular prism here in red, and then I have a second rectangular prism here where I'm going to put the lines. So I'm going to call this shape number 1 and shape 2. So it's a rectangular prism, which we talked about last week. To find the volume of rectangular prism, and I'll write it here, rectangular prism is like a box. Remember I said it looks like a box? It's length times width times height. So I'm going to do shape 1 here, which is the length is 10. Excellent, because this 10 is the same thing on that side. The base is a rectangle. So this is like saying here is 10 and then the bottom is 10. So it's 10 times 7 times 3. 7 3 is 21. This works out to be 210. And remember it says add them. And let's do shape 2. In this case, it's super simple and straightforward. It's another rectangular prism. Now be careful. This 8 represents the entire length. If this is 3, here is 3. Remember, this rectangular prism for number 2, it's only this little piece right here, the squiggly line. So if this is 3 and the whole thing is 8, this has to be 5. And just how we're getting that, we do 8 minus 3. So when I come on this side to do shape 2, I'm going to do 4 times 5 times 10, which will give me 200. So the volume for shape 1 is 210. The volume of shape 2 is 200. To get the volume of the entire shape, I add them together, which is actually going to be 410 centimeters cube, because we're dealing with volume. You guys know I like to make this up on the spot. This happened to be a whole number, so no big deal. But the idea here is splitting them, and we figured out there were 2 rectangular prisms. Then we found the volume of each shape, 1 and 2, and then we add them together. Please make sure you copy this in your notebook. Now, what about this crazy guy right here? So again, when we're thinking of this, I want you to think of what shape do you see. Excellent, guys. It should be a rectangular prism again. And in this case, again, it's length times width times height. So that's this piece right here. And then what else do you see? You got it. What else? Perfect. It's a triangular. And triangular prism, remember that's the big B times H. And because it's a triangle, it's half base times height to replace big B and then the height. So most of you may say that, okay, a rectangular prism is, this is 13, this side is 13, it's more of like a square. It's fine, it's the same formula. So let's go ahead and do this one. Let's call this shape 1 and shape 2. So here, shape 1. the rectangular prism, or, you know, there's square there, it's fine. 13 times 13 times 30, right? Remember the 13 where they're coming from. So here we're going to get some crazy numbers, which is okay. This is 5,070. And then plus my shape 2, which is the triangular prism. And again, remember, big B represents the area of base, which is this guy right here. I'm on this side. The height is 13, and the base is 9, and then the length of the entire prism is 30. So when I do the substitution, half times 9 times 13 times the length of everything. My addition, this works out to be 1755. And then remember, your final step, I found the volume of shape 1, I found the volume of shape 2, and then I combine them, 6,825 inches cube. Right? So this, guys, is similar to the compound area. You're just doing with this with the volume formula we learned last week. Now, after you copy these two examples, you guys know the deal. Now, here's the problem. A lot of you have been submitting work, especially if they're multiple choice, and just giving me number 1 is A, number 2 is B. You cannot get full credit, and I don't know how to give you feedback on your work because we're not meeting face to face. I want to be able to see where you're making your mistake. Can you substitute into the formula? Are you getting the wrong answer because you probably don't have a calculator on you? So for this assignment, please make sure you're showing all the work. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Alrighty, have a great day, guys.